get to Fort Stevens, I recommend starting at the Visitor Center. They have maps with like information about each stop, which I think is good. And everything's just kind of spread out around and you kind of wander and learn. So it's busier than I thought it would be. This was an embankment that they used to protect the soldiers from enemies approaching from behind the fort. So Fort Stevens was built around 1864, near the end of the Civil War, and it was active through the Spanish-American War and World War II. After World War II, the Army closed the base and removed the weapons, and the Oregon Parks Department now keeps it as like a historical park. So this is like the backside of the West Battery, and that pit right there is where they would raise the weapon up once the spotter had determined where they needed to fire toward. So this battery came into use around December of 1945, and it had new technology to allow, it used radar to allow for better accuracy when firing in bad weather or fog. And they could fire between 9 and 15 miles away from this battery. And then this berm was used for practice. The soldiers would be over there and they'd fire toward the berm just so it would embed in the ground for target practice. I'm at Battery 245. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm really curious. Like it sounds like it'd be like an HVAC system. So why would they still be running HVAC in this old fort? Just to keep moisture out maybe? Like dehumidify it to preserve the structure? So Battery 245 was the only battery in Oregon that got constructed during World War II, and its job was to protect the mouth of the Columbia River. So I'm on top of the West Battery, and it was established in 1896 during the Spanish-American War, and it was the first one at Fort Stevens to be done in concrete. So the Visitor Center was originally the War Games building where they would practice battle strategy on a lit up table. And this is Battery Pratt Command Station right here. This is a 200-pound Parrott rifle. It's a full-size replica. This was used at Fort Stevens from 1867 until the 1890s. So the first time troops were stationed here was April of 1865, and at that time there were no roads or bridges to get here. It was only by boat. That was the only way you could get here. During the Civil War, guns had to be loaded from the front, which was more dangerous to soldiers. So when the Civil War was over, they wanted to modernize this area, this fort, and use rear loading guns because that was the latest technology and it was better for soldiers. So during the Civil War, the senators of Oregon were concerned that anybody could just come up the Columbia River and attack every town along the river. So they wrote to Abraham Lincoln, or they went to Abraham Lincoln, and they wanted to have a fort here to protect the people. And so Congress set aside money for it in 1862, and then it took a year, and then Abraham Lincoln ordered it to be built. They got it completed in 1866, which, if you know, the Civil War ended in 1865. To get the cannons here, they were loaded on a ship in New York City, New York, and they sailed around the tip of South America and then all the way up the western coast of South America, Central America, until it got here. The earthworks batteries are built closer to the river because at that time the weapons couldn't fire as far, so they needed to be closer to the river. They also constructed it out of sand because they had found that sand stopped bullets and weapons better than brick. That's the Columbia River. When you're here, be sure you take the Jetty Observation Trail. It's really pretty. There are parts that are shaded and parts that are sunny, and you can see the Columbia River and you can see where it meets the Pacific Ocean. It's been really neat. I love this trail. So this is a machine gun nest, or machine gun emplacement, and it would have been enclosed when it was actively used. Way over there is Cape Disappointment in Washington, and I thought we were going to have time to do both parks today, but I don't know, I always spend more time in a place than I expect to. But there were two forts over there, so Fort Stevens and the two forts over where Cape Disappointment State Park now is, they were called like the Triangle of Fire, and those three forts guarded the mouth of the Columbia River. It might be hard for you to see, but those are old trestles from a railroad that they used originally to haul tons of rocks to build the jetty and deepen the mouth of the Columbia River. Then during World War II, after Pearl Harbor was bombed, the Army used that railroad again to get guns and crews out to the station to protect the coastline. I'm out at the South Jetty Observation Area, and the jetty is actively under construction right now, which is kind of cool. So we can't go up on the observation tower like we would have been able to, but I'm just going to follow the trail and see what we can see. Since we can't walk out on the jetty, I went down to Area D, which takes you over to the Columbia River side, and I think there's some beach access, so might as well check it out while we're here. It's a really pretty ocean. Oh, that's cold. Oh my, that's cold. So, this is the end of the ocean for now. But I want to show you something. That jetty we were trying to get out on earlier, I can see where the Columbia meets the Pacific. That jetty goes so far out there. Time to walk back to the car.